We talking about practice. Not a game, not a game. We talking about practice. Practice, man. I mean, how silly is that?
Just a bit outside.
Oh my, he's on fire!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Flip Side Podcast. We are back for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. I'm Nathan Moss. I'm joined, as always, by Tyler Hayward of the Trouble with the Snap podcast. We are going to be, usually it's a cover three, meaning, each of us pick three games, but we don't have three games each to pick as we are have narrowed it down to 8 teams left in the National Football League. Tyler will be taking on the AFC. I will be taking on the NFC. Boatload of games, or big games, boatload of storylines. And we're excited to get this kicked off. We're excited to put a cap on our successful season so far. As I said, we're joined by Tyler Hayward. Tyler, how you doing today?
Doing good. Obviously a lot going on with the divisional round of the playoffs. A lot of really interesting games, and then obviously, everything that's going on with the trouble with the snap or whatever. Michigan looking like maybe the best team in the country, minus Gonzaga, and now you're talking Michigan State might miss their tournament for the first time since Izzo's second season, and so there's obviously just a lot to really dive into this time of year. Conference play in college basketball, and obviously what's going on in the NFL. Just a lot of good stuff. Looking forward to diving into this NFL talk, though.
Yeah, and to the Big Ten, I think there's a little bit of overreaction on both sides of that. Michigan has looked good as they put a hurting on the number 9 Badgers last night in basketball to continue their undefeated season, but to assume that the Spartans won't be participating in March is a bit of an overreaction because there's a lot of basketball left, and as you know, if the Spartans have the same record as another team, even with maybe more quality wins, the name of the program is going to get them in.
Yeah, that plus the strength of the Big Ten, it's loaded. I would just say screw it and throw everybody but Nebraska in there just to see what happens. But
yeah, let the Huskers in.
Yeah, might as well. They're coached up pretty well by Fred Hoiberg too. So yeah, it's a great league, great coaches 1 through 14.
Anyways, enough about the child sport. We have a couple. You bravely last week you took the AFC bravely with some tough matchups, and they don't get much easier this week, as you'd expect coming out of the playoffs. The NFC is clearly where the storylines are, but the AFC has some intriguing matchups. Why don't you start us off with your first pick this week?
Oh, my first pick. I whiffed on the spread last week. The spread for Buffalo this time, though, is 2.5. I more or less treat those games as pick'ems. 2.5 is a rather small number. Really hard to get that differential in football. And I whiffed because I took the Bills with the 7, and ultimately the Colts should have won that game. I think that serves as a little bit of a wake-up call for Josh Allen and the boys. I think that the Bills are a better team than Baltimore. I think the way Allen and the Bills have played, they are kind of young. New chemistry with Stephon Diggs. Obviously, the best receiver statistically speaking in the NFL this season. So everything was they kind of got rolling a little bit, and I think maybe they got a little cocky coming into the playoffs. Why in that conference? Would you do that? I don't know. But they're a young team, so I think it served as a wake-up call, and I think they're going to be ready to hammer Baltimore.
Yeah, this game, I'm like I said, I'm glad you took the AFC because as much as I've been on the Bills bandwagon since the beginning of the year, I think Baltimore is playing with that chip on their shoulder. They match up. I think they match up well with Buffalo. Obviously, Stephon Diggs has been a monster. Josh Allen's put together an outstanding season. I think Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, and company cause a bit of a problem. And on the other side of the ball, Buffalo, if they do have an Achilles heel, it's stopping the run. And there's no quarterback you want to see less when you have difficulties against the run than Lamar Jackson. I think Buffalo. This game tells me, Buffalo. This line moved from 1 to 2.5 to almost 3, and then back down to 2.5. A lot of bookmakers usually account for give 2.5 points for home field, and if there's any team that you give 2.5 to, it's Buffalo or Kansas City or Green Bay or even New Orleans. So that tells me that the bookmakers think that these two teams are even. I think the spread's wrong because I don't think these two teams are even. I think Buffalo's a better team. I think Baltimore's got a whole lot more to prove, but I agree with you. I like Buffalo with 2.5 points this week.
Yeah, well, you also have to consider too, Baltimore did not look great offensively against a really shoddy Tennessee defense. Not to say the Bills are the world beaters they were last season, but this
definitely a better secondary.
Yeah, and this is a situation too where it allows you to load up the box, stretch the box out. You can get Lamar Jackson running a little bit more sideline to sideline because you have a guy like Tre'Davious White who can cover Hollywood. And so that's a situation where he allows you that freedom that a guy like Adoree Jackson or Desmond King doesn't allow you. And you can go out there, you can single cover him and just say, "This is your show, White." And so I think that that's going to allow the Bills to load up the box a little bit more. Their run defense hasn't been great, but I think that they're going to make an adjustment for that, given the fact that last week was really the only week for his entire career we saw Lamar Jackson use Marquise Brown like he should have, use the passing game like he should have.
Yeah, and Buffalo was watching. Buffalo saw that, and the luxury of having a player like Tre'Davious White is you can just stick him on the one and let the other 10 guys take care of the rest. I mean, your second best weapon in that, other than Lamar Jackson's feet, is Mark Andrews, and what you need there is a linebacker that can cover sideline to sideline, and there may be none better than Tremaine Edmonds, and Jordan Poyer can, Jamal Adams gets all the credit for being a safety that can play in the box. Tyrann Mathieu gets the credit too, but Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde can do it as good as any. And I think Baltimore is a very, very live underdog in this, but Buffalo's the better team. Buffalo's where you're going to want to put your money, especially with the spread being so small. I was expecting 4.5. Just because of Baltimore's ineptitude through the air. And I totally agree. I like Buffalo.
Yep.
The going over the NFC, my first game before I get into my favorite game that seems to rile people up on social media. I'm going to go with the two old guys. We've got Tom Brady and Drew Brees, who have combined for about 160,000 passing yards and about 160 years lived. This might come as a shock. New Orleans comes to this game a 3-point favorite, and rightfully so. They've dominated this matchup. Last time they played, that was with Tampa at pretty much full strength with Antonio Brown. New Orleans won this game 38-3. However, I am taking Tampa Bay +3. I'm not picking against Tom Brady in the playoffs. I don't care if he's an underdog. I don't care if he's a 10-point favorite. This guy's been there. I know Breeze has played in his share of big games, but for everything that I think is overstated about Tom Brady and his playoff resume, his Super Bowl accolades, all of that, I think it does come into play, and I think that him being in this position, making good decisions under pressure, and making good decisions in the biggest of games is going to be the X factor in this game. And I think this game comes down to the wire. I'm not necessarily going to say that Tampa Bay wins this game. I think Antonio Brown is a huge add for this team. When they first got him, they didn't really use him the right way. They didn't use him the right way against New Orleans. He's a slot receiver. Brady likes to get rid of the ball. And a team that's going to get pressure like the Saints, you're going to want to use your slot options, your Gronks, your ABs, and why not go get Antonio Brown for basically $1, being the best slot receiver we've seen in the past 15 years. I like Tampa here. I think their defense is underrated. I think as much as people talk about Tom Brady slowing down, I think Breeze has slowed down even more. I think Kamara and Michael Thomas could be a problem, but I think if any team can scheme against it, it's Todd Bowles, and it's this very, very talented Tampa Bay defense that just so happens to be getting back their stud at middle linebacker, their second stud at middle linebacker in Devin White.
Yeah, it's an underrated defensive group from the talent perspective. Then you throw in Todd Bowles, who, look, not a great head coach. We've seen that, but
better than Adam Gase.
I'm better than Adam Gase, but it's a situation where he's a great, great, great defensive coordinator, and when you have the talent that he does, especially in the linebacking group with White and David, look, this Tampa team is really, really good. I know that it's hard to beat a team twice in a season, let alone 3 times. But I think that this, unless Matt Patricia's in your division, but I think that this is I don't know, just the way that New Orleans went about it. It kind of scares me off of Tampa here because they didn't just dominate one game. They dominated both, and I think that this is a situation that even though Brady's got that experience, Breeze has it too. Obviously there's a little more. There's a few more characters, let's just say, in regards to Michael Thomas, his ego, things like that. But I think that this is a New Orleans team that, look, they should walk away with this. It's not going to be as ugly as the last game was, but I could see it getting out of hand.
Yeah, I look back at the last game, and Saints fans seem pretty confident about this one. But if you're going into a playoff matchup expecting Tom Brady to throw three interceptions inside the red zone, you should probably game plan a little better.
Yeah.
I understand that the Saints are loaded on offense and they're loaded on defense, and Marshawn Lattimore can absolutely play, but Marshawn Lattimore struggles with Mike Evans, and we saw that in the last game. Tom Brady didn't do much, but Mike Evans, 6 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets, and I know he's a little hampered. I just think that when it comes down to it, there's been much made of Arians kind of wanting to do things his way and calling out Brady and doing this. Well, now we're getting to the point where Arians hasn't been where Brady is right now. And I think that if this comes down to it, if it comes to making decisions, if it comes to what they need to do in certain situations, I don't think there's anybody in the history of football better for this situation than Tom Brady.
Yeah, and I'm definitely right there with you.
All right, why don't you go ahead and give us your other AFC darlings
Look,
for the divisional round?
Look, All right, I picked Pittsburgh. Okay, so I feel bad about that. I don't think I disrespected Cleveland though in doing so. Look, you and me, we figured the Steelers' season would come to an end with him making a lot of mistakes. I didn't think it was going to be
Yep.
round one. 2, 3, maybe. But that was that was an ugly game. Cleveland is a team though where they can't do that defensively back to back. Kansas City right now is favored by 10. I take Cleveland because they run the ball well. The Chiefs have issues stopping the run. I am going to take Cleveland. If Kansas City gets out to a quick 10, 14-point lead, the game's over. Baker Mayfield can't lead a comeback like that. Throwing the ball and especially throwing the ball against a guy like Breland, who's, he did really well in the playoffs last year against a guy like Tyrann Mathieu. So if it gets out to a 10, 13-point lead, then obviously, the game's over and Kansas City's definitely going to cover, in my opinion. But I think if the Browns can strike first, I think that this is a situation where they can keep it within that 10-point range. The Chiefs have kind of lollygag through the entire regular season. I think maybe that bye week is going to help them. You're not going to get 5 turnovers, and it was a situation last week where, despite the 5 turnovers, Steelers still only lost by 13. Should have been 11 if they kicked extra points instead of going for 2. And you had a 38-year-old Ben Roethlisberger playing one of the worst games of his life, still throw for 500 yards. You're not going against a 38-year-old Ben Roethlisberger. You're going against Patrick Mahomes in his prime. Maybe, if he's there yet, because he's so young. You're going against the Patrick Mahomes, who's a lot better. And so I think this is a situation where the Chiefs are going to win, but the Browns cover just because their inability to stop the run.
Yeah, and you got to think, Stefanski coming into this game, being the run-heavy coach that he is, his philosophy is keep Mahomes off the field. And I don't think there's a team that's more capable of chewing up clock and picking up first downs on the ground against Kansas City Chiefs than this two-headed monster of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt coming into a revenge game, and from everything he said pregame, he's a pretty petty dude, even though he absolutely deserved to be cut from that team and probably cut from the NFL.
Definitely should have been punted out of the league.
Yeah. On the contrary, I agree with you here. If this was 6.5, 7, probably not. But yeah. I don't love what I've seen. I mean, everybody says, Kansas City's the best team. Kansas City's the best team, and maybe they're just sleepwalking through the league. But I find it hard to believe that in a competitive league like the NFL, any team can sleepwalk. And what I've seen is they haven't looked good. They haven't looked like they did last year. They don't look like they did the year before that. And I know Travis Kelce's having a phenomenal year, but I think that they seem to be getting as figured out as you can be at this point. I know there was no film on Mahomes for the first couple of years. There's more film on him. People still haven't figured him out, but they do know his tendencies. They do know what the Chiefs like to do at this point. Their defense, they got studs, Chris Jones, Tyrann Mathieu. They're there, but if you look at the metrics, a lot of it has to do with them leading a lot of games, but they do give up yards. And Patrick Mahomes has made some bad throws this year. He's gotten lucky. A lot of them have wound up on the ground. But if Myles Garrett can do what Myles Garrett does and force him to make decisions that he doesn't want to make, this could be a long day. I think the Chiefs win this game, but 10.5 is too big for anybody in the divisional round.
Yeah, I saw that number, and I mean, you just look at what they did. Like I said, you're not going against Ben, and it last week was almost a 10-point game with 5 turnovers against a Steelers team that has, well, little to offer besides throwing the ball, and I know the Chiefs are kind of the same way. You know, they just throw it all the time. There's not a lot of effort to even try to run it, but they supplement that with the short passes. And when you have guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell, who are both quality receiving backs out of the backfield, you can supplement the lack of a run game with short passes. Between that and the fact Derek Fisher is one of the better left tackles in the league, he'll be going against Myles Garrett. It's not going to be as one-sided there as people think. Bell is a quality blocker. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is very solid for a rookie, so they can come over, quick chip, dump out into the flat. I don't think they're going to get that pressure on Mahomes that they're typically able to get.
Yeah, I think, I think Kansas City has, like I said, kind of sleepwalked through this. And my worry for Kansas City is that they see Cleveland and they see the times they've slipped this year and nearly missed the playoffs, and they might be overlooking this one too. I mean, Cleveland very well, as we saw, Cleveland very well could just win this game. It takes a few mistakes early for a game to get out of hand quick, but Andy Reid and this group, they've been here, they've done this. Not saying that Ben hasn't, but Ben's not what he used to be. And as much as I thought the Steelers were the side last week, it brought me great joy to see his oversized face crying in his helmet. I don't know why. I've never really disliked Ben Roethlisberger, but he's not an overly likable guy. Contrary to most people's belief, contrary to most people's opinion, I like Juju. I like a lot of the weapons they had, but to say that was just an 11-point game is ridiculous, because that game was over and Pittsburgh had to use every bit of garbage time to make it somewhat respectable.
Yeah, and look, I can definitely see where you're coming from. You're not going to play the same type of defense when you're up by 3 as opposed to when you're up by 24. That's obviously a completely different style. But at the same time, you don't get gifted, that many additional offensive possessions either. And so the fact that with or without garbage time, the score ended up being that close, it's kind of embarrassing. It really is. Look, we talk about trouble with the snap. I cover Michigan State, they lost to 12 by Rutgers with 7 turnovers, and Rutgers is not a good football team. And, I think everyone kind of agreed that Pittsburgh was a little overrated, and the fact that the Browns were still that close to losing to a Pittsburgh team with that many extra possessions, it doesn't look good. I think the Chiefs are actually up by more than that 10-point spread. At the end of the game, I think the Browns, do a little garbage time damage of their own, and I think that's how they end up covering.
Oh, backdoor Baker. I don't hate it. I do worry about Baker not letting this game get out of hand. He is prone to mistakes. Ego gets in his way sometimes. As much as people talk about, they're better without Odell Beckham, I think they'd probably kill to have number 13 right about now. But yeah, the outside of the front line of the Cleveland Browns, they don't have a lot to offer on the defensive side of the ball. So this could be an interesting game. This could be a massive upset, or it could be a 48-7 Chiefs win, and anything in between. But there's really really a lot of variables in this game. We've seen a lot of different versions of both of these teams throughout this season. So, yeah, I'm like I said, I'm glad you took the AFC because I don't want anything to do with it. To close it out, I seem to be ruffling some feathers. And it's not the fact I'm a Lions fan. It's not that I just hate the Packers with every bit of my being. As you know, from the beginning of this year, I have raved about the Los Angeles Rams. And I don't care about Goff's thumb. He looked fine. He wasn't great in their last game against Seattle, but he was good enough. And as I said earlier in the season, never mind Goff, never mind their offense. That's not what this team's about. What this team's about is I know you have a massive man crush on Patrick Mahomes, but this Rams team has the best player in the National Football League. And then they have Aaron Donald. Because what I've seen out of Jalen Ramsey in the past 4 or 5 weeks is unlike anything I've seen before. That guy is afraid of nothing. He covers anybody. He follows the number one wherever they go. When they played the Cardinals in a win or go home game, you would have thought that DeAndre Hopkins wasn't even playing. So what that tells me is you've got the two best defensive players in the NFL, Aaron Donald, who wreaked havoc on one of the most elusive, efficient passers we've ever seen in Seattle, and Russell Wilson, made DK Metcalf work for every single yard he had. And now you're going from a team with a super elusive quarterback to a somewhat elusive quarterback. You've got Jalen Ramsey, who you can stick on the number one, and all the Packers have is a number one. What it looks like to me is Ramsey's going to follow around Devontae Adams, and it's going to have to be somebody else for the Green Bay Packers. And what I've seen out of Cam Akers, a couple times this year, he's busted loose and looked like one of the best running backs in the league. This is a tragedy at 7 points, because people say, oh, it's cold weather, it's this, it's that. Defense travels. Aaron Donald doesn't care if it's cold. Jalen Ramsey doesn't care if it's cold. The weather affects both sides. It forces you to run the ball, but this looks like a nightmare matchup with probably the best corner we've seen in a long time, playing against the only real weapon that the Green Bay Packers have, and a interior defensive lineman that can run through whatever offensive line you throw at him, especially a couple backups with a banged up Green Bay line. This is going to have to be Aaron Jones. There's no way the Green Bay Packers cover this spread of 7. And if I had to pick one team to win this straight up, I'm taking the Rams all day.
I don't know if I would go that far in regards to taking them straight up. I definitely think they cover, though. You said Aaron Jones has to do it. That's obvious, because Jalen Ramsey might be the last of a dying breed in regards to cornerbacks. Number one corner shadowing number one receivers. That doesn't happen anymore. And the fact that he's able to do that, I think it's going to bode well. I think any opportunity that Rodgers gets where Ramsey's on the opposite side of Devontae Adams, I think he's going to take that risk. And I think that, he may be a little too overzealous looking to try to get it to him. We kind of saw that in Tampa. And Aaron Rodgers played like garbage. And I think that, you mentioned Cam Akers too, who's, considering the running back shuffle that the Rams have been doing all year, some of it necessary due to injuries, some of it just coaches' decisions. Cam Akers looks like he's solidifying that number one spot for next year. The Packers, they don't have any I watched the Major League today, so let's just say marbles in regards to physical football. Can they blow out the Rams? Probably, just because the Rams offense is still a little banged up at wide receiver. Cooper Kupp got dinged up. Not 100% sure the status on him. I don't know if the Rams could keep pace with the Packers offense no matter what defense they're going against, and that's why I'm thinking the Packers win this game. But I'm definitely taking the Rams. I think that, you talked about it. Aaron Donald's going against a couple backups, and even then, one of the backups is, fresh off a practice squad from Indianapolis.
Yep.
I know he plays left tackle. I know Aaron Donald lines up in the middle, but Aaron Donald demands so much attention it turns into one-on-one on the outside when you're protecting. And I think that that's an issue for Green Bay. You can sit there and you can throw him, you can throw your front, you can throw a center and a guard at Aaron Donald, you can throw Aaron Jones at him, but then it's one-on-one on the outside. And I think that just, means that the Packers offense isn't going to be as efficient as it normally is. I think Rodgers has thrown more touchdowns than they punted. So losing a massive amount offensively, then losing a massively, I think it makes things a little tighter, but I don't think they lose enough to lose this game.
Yeah, I after week 4, I said it was about the same time that I said the Rams might be the team to beat in the NFC West. I said that Aaron Rodgers is going to win MVP, and this is exactly what I pointed to. Their last 6 games: Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, Carolina, Tennessee,
Scrubs.
Chicago. None of those teams defensively are anywhere near what the Rams are, and none of them offensively, other than Tennessee, are what the Rams are. Goff's thumb will be damned. None of them have a Sean McVay that can scheme up a way to beat you. I've said from day one that Green Bay's defense is fake, and they've got Jair Alexander who can play. Kevin King is questionable. This isn't a one-dimensional offense by any means. Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp are 2 very, very viable threats. This is a quarterback that's been there. There's a coach that's been there. This is an offensive line that got back Whitworth, which is huge. But I think the Packers are overmatched. I think it's absolutely absurd for people to just think, oh, it's cold. 7 points. Like this team has shown zero weakness on defense. The Packers have shown chinks in the armor on defense. They gave up a ton of points to Minnesota, and didn't score much. This isn't the Minnesota Vikings defense, and Jalen Ramsey is better than both. Jalen Ramsey can cover both receivers better than Minnesota's dime defense can.
Yeah. Well, I want to bring up one more thing too. Is we mentioned Ramsey's going to be on Adams. He's probably going to shadow him, and then Aaron Donald's going to be getting the pressure in the middle. Let's not act like that's not going to happen. Aaron Rodgers has a tendency to get frustrated in games like this. And you and I had this conversation the other night, more or less sparked by a Packers fan, where I don't consider him, the GOAT like a lot of Green Bay fans do. Now, Green Bay thinks they have the best everything of all time. That's fine. But I put him a lot lower than a lot of people do, and this is the reason why I do it. This is the same reason why. Don't get started. I know this is a conversation for another show. I do the same thing with LeBron James. Is they have those moments in championship situations where they look disinterested. And we saw that, and I know it wasn't a championship situation, but let's be real, Tampa Bay versus Green Bay, as early as it was on in the season, everyone looked at that as like a measuring stick for this new Tampa Bay team, and Aaron Rodgers had an opportunity to put a stamp on that game. And once things started, once one thing went wrong, it snowballed. Not as bad as what the the Pittsburgh Steelers did, but that type of thing has happened to Aaron Rodgers a lot, and we saw it last year in the NFC Championship against San Francisco. Aaron Rodgers has a tendency to get frustrated when you put a guy like Ramsey on your best receiver and you're getting beat up by the best player in the NFL. You can definitely see this happening again with him.
Yeah. And this is not going to Lambeau minus 20 blizzard. This is supposed to be 32 clear skies. These players, it's the playoffs. These players don't care about the cold. This and the thing you mentioned, Rodgers getting frustrated in certain games. Those teams aren't Chicago or Tennessee or Carolina. Those are good defenses. And you're not going to face anything that could possibly frustrate you as much as Aaron Donald. I know Khalil Mack can play. He had a down year. But if you can weather the storm and stand back there for 2 or 3 seconds, there's not a whole lot on the back end for Chicago. Certainly not an all-pro corner like Jalen Ramsey or John Johnson or what this Rams secondary brings. I don't know how much of this number has to do with Goff's thumb, but Goff healthy, not healthy. The +7 is that's an easy one. As soon as I saw this line pop, I said, "Oh, this is." I thought 4, and I still probably would have taken the Rams. It would have been tougher, but 7's too easy. I think the Rams win this game. The only benefit Green Bay has is that they're coming off a bye and they've had a chance to game plan for this, but. After I saw the unflappable Russell Wilson get frustrated, I don't think there's anything this Rams team can't do. If they win this game, they go up against the winner of Tampa and New Orleans, 2 quarterbacks that cannot handle pressure up the middle. This is their Super Bowl because they can take it all the way to the promised land.
Yeah, and I don't know if the game planning or whatever really comes into effect during bye weeks because. Look, the way we were looking at this game, man, I mean, I know you had the Rams, but Seattle very easily could have won that game. And obviously not like looking at the score or anything like that, but like straight up, you see Rams versus Seahawks, Seattle can win that game. And so it's not like you're sitting there and you're Tampa Bay and you're prepping for New Orleans just because Chicago ain't going to freaking make it.
Right. And if you're Tampa or Green Bay, I mean, you don't necessarily have to prep a whole lot for Chicago, a team that you've already seen. This team, Aaron Rodgers has seen Jalen Ramsey once in his career, once, and this is the best version of Jalen Ramsey I've seen after what I've seen him do to DeAndre Hopkins in 2 straight weeks. You could tell that he was switching off his assignment when Hopkins would go in motion just to follow number 10. If these Green Bay Packer fans that are looking forward to, I saw on Facebook, can't wait to see Brady come to Lambeau. Can't wait to see Breeze come to Lambeau in the cold, blah, blah, blah. You may not get that. You better worry about number 99 right in front of you. Because he broke his ribs, it looked like last week, and still came back into the game and gave Russell Wilson all sorts of fits with backup offensive linemen, and that's exactly what Green Bay has. I think Green Bay is the benefactor of a bad division, and they haven't seen anything remotely close to this since San Francisco, where they struggled greatly.
Yep, I'm right there with you.
But that is going to do it for our divisional picks. To recap, Tyler, out of AFC, it has the Buffalo Bills -2.5.
Cleveland +10.
Again, Josh Allen, and that's going to be an absolute shootout schematically. 2 exciting quarterbacks with a whole lot to prove after disappointing playoff runs. Cleveland with the ultimate chip on their shoulder, trying to go into the big bad defending champion Kansas City and take one out of Arrowhead. And then I've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, absolutely loaded, good defense, going against Drew Brees. They look like a well-oiled machine, but if anybody can take it down, it's Tom and company. And then, of course, the Rams breaking all those cheesehead hearts. And that all starts Saturday at 4:30ish. I think the first game is 4:30 with the Rams and Green Bay. We got football all weekend, not the double triple headers that we had last week, but still a pretty good menu of football. So stay tuned. We are going to narrow it down, and we will have next week. We will have one game apiece. Not sure yet if we're going to stick with divisions, probably, but that's going to do it for the Flip Side podcast. That's going to do it for the cover 3. We got 2 more left. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Thank you. And if you've stuck with us the whole year, we appreciate it. Have a good weekend. Enjoy it. It's almost over.